Gene Simmons, you're a moron. Sitting there and saying that rock is dead. Yeah, it may not be like the radio gold of the 1970s where every rock band was one of the biggest bands in the world, but there are plenty of examples out there as to why rock is still alive and well. How about we talk about a couple of them? Let's talk about at least 10. And let's face it, anybody who's viewing this video, you probably have 3 or 4 other bands in mind that aren't going to be listed on this list. So you should definitely mention them in the comments below. That way other people can discover them. Let's, through this video, actually give a lot of different rock bands and different music to other people. That way, maybe rock can be alive in Gene Simmons' eyes here in a couple of years, even though it's alive and well right now. So I could easily sit here and talk to you guys about bands that we already know, pre-established acts that have been around for 20 years or so that are still going strong. And you know which bands I'm talking about. We're talking about the Soundgardens and the Alice in Chains from the grunge age. We're talking about Pearl Jam, which just released Lightning Bolt a couple of years ago to widespread acclaim. And we could talk about the Foo Fighters, who were actually one of the biggest advocates against what Gene Simmons had to say, and whose album Sonic Highways really intends to prove that rock is still alive and well. Dave Grohl, of course, very outspoken on this topic. But what about bands such as The Killers? What about Cage the Elephant or Foster the People, Young the Giant? Bands that have come out just within the past couple of years that may have only 2 to 3 albums to their credit, with the exception of The Killers, who have been around for more than a decade and have a wealth of a discography to their credit, and still continue to seem to evolve. Whenever you consider The Killers, this is a band that experienced a huge success right off of the bat with one of their very first singles, and were able to maintain success while also being able to shed that skin that kind of was really expected of them with their first album, and really just continue to evolve and become just a really solid band all around. It's to the point where their live shows are ones that really can convey a myriad of emotions and really showcase what makes rock music such an infectious force in nature. Or a band that I've seen live. I've seen Foster the People live. They actually convey the same emotion even though they were only 2 albums deep into their career. And it's definitely one that has already taken the shape very similar to The Killers, where they had a very wildly successful first album, and with the second one, it's not as popular considering it doesn't sound as much like the first one, but it may actually be better than the first one based around that fact, considering they did take some risks, they did take some leaps, and this is one that definitely conveys a larger emotional hue. Cage the Elephant is a band that really is able to showcase a lot of different sides to themselves. It's almost one side too many. It's almost like this band doesn't know who they want to be. But at the same time, that's actually what makes them really alluring, what makes them a really positive draw, considering they have so many different ideas and so many different styles, so many different parts to them, that it literally makes every track on every album feel relatively unique. And Young the Giant, who are only 2 albums in their career, are already showing a lot of evolution as well. Not to mention they have a lighter side to themselves, considering they're able to do covers such as, Ignition by R. Kelly. Really good stuff. I've actually seen every single one of these bands live, with the exception of Cage the Elephant, and I would have seen them live had I, seen one of the bands that I'm about to speak about. Now, you guys all know these names. You guys know about the Arcade Fire. You guys know about the Arctic Monkeys. And you guys know about the Black Keys. In fact, some of you are probably sick to death of hearing some of the songs by these bands that are listed. Maybe, Do I Want to Know by the Arctic Monkeys. But this is a group that's been together for the past 7 or 8 years and has been doing fantastically. AM actually revitalized a widespread appeal to this group. And they're doing it just by making, basic garage rock that really doesn't have too much to it, but it doesn't have to. It's almost as simple as, some of the early Rolling Stones material, in the fact that it's very direct and it's very much in your face and right there in front of you, but it has this groove and rhythm to it that's really cool. The Black Keys you've probably heard a ton of within the past couple of years, but they definitely have signaled that rock is still not dead. They're a band that's still able to, maintain tremendous appeal, and it really shows you that just one song can easily spark a revolution. A song such as Tighten Up easily leads to Howlin' to You, which leads to all the tracks off of El Camino, and now leads to, the tracks off of Turn Blue. And then whenever we talk about the Arcade Fire, this is a band that continues to evolve themselves, and They're a band that's also gotten one of the highest accolades in the land, Album of the Year. Gee, Gene, when's the last time a Kiss album has been Album of the Year? Signs are pointing toward never. But yeah, the Arcade Fire really expand their horizons and just continue to grow and evolve and really incorporate more and more into their music, with their last album, Reflector, being a massive double album that really conveys all sorts of different ideas. And it's one that is able to do so with a grace and a style that is very difficult to replicate. What about a band such as Crowbot that we just spoke about on this channel? What about that? What about them? These guys are just new to the fold. They just released their debut album, and they already sound like a band that's been together for a long time. The Beardos, the Bearded Warriors, these gentlemen from Pennsylvania, might I add, so home state representing, just put forth a phenomenal effort with their debut album, Something Supernatural, which I highly recommend to each and every one of you watching this video. It's definitely something that showcases a little bit of that old dirty garage approach, mixed with some psychedelic rock and mixed even with a little bit of stoner rock. And these combinations easily remind me of bands such as Caius. And of course, whenever you mention Caius and Josh Homme, you have to mention Queens of the Stone Age. Queens of the Stone Age just released Like Clockwork 2 years ago, and that was a huge deal. That was a big release. They closed out the Grammys this past year. It's been a while since you've done that, Gene. It's been a while since Kiss has done that. You guys could probably easily do that. It's more likely than you guys winning the Album of the Year award, but hey, what can I say? Whenever Ace Frehley's making a better album than Kiss's past, 2 or 3 albums, that's saying something. What about a band such as, I don't know, White Denim? A New Act Like That, or Weird Dreams? These are two really kind of off-the-wall picks. These are two picks that really remind me a little bit of what happens whenever a band is able to really draw on multiple inspirations and really create something very fiercely independent, but at the same time can really fall into a lot of different categories, such as Southern rock or psychedelic rock, either that or just, calling it plain, simple rock and roll music. It's really all that you really should have to do. These are two great bands that are, as of right now, kind of criminally unappreciated. Weird Dreams is really difficult to find, but if you have Spotify, you can listen to it, and you're going to really enjoy it. I can guarantee you that, to the point where you're going to want to order the album. White Denim's starting to pick up a little bit of real momentum, perhaps because of some of the bands that they're associated with or on the same tongue with. And the band that I'm thinking about specifically, actually, is Royal Blood. Royal Blood just released their debut album a couple of months ago, and they have a song called Out of the Black that is really starting to get some heavy circulation on the radio, and it's a great song. And the whole rest of the album is no slouch either. To be perfectly honest, Out of the Black is one of the hardest rockers on the album, but at the same time, the rest of the stuff is really able to very, very sort of simply really deliver great garage rock, really great garage style rock that really has that edge that you can tell that within a couple of years, this is going to be something that's just going to take off and absolutely shoot itself to the moon. Royal Blood has a tremendous future. I think White Denim really does as well. However, White Denim is just a band that needs to kind of be exposed to a couple of more people. They're a little bit more difficult to get into than a band such as a Royal Blood, but if you do get yourselves into them, it's certainly one that feels extremely rewarding. Now, there's a couple of bands that I've been championing for a long time. I've done reviews of their albums. I've just talked about them in general. Margot the Nuclear So-and-Sos and Portugal the Man. These are two great indie rock real titans, in my opinion, but they're relatively unknown to a lot of other individuals. Portugal the Man, on their last album, Evil Friends, from last year, actually got the opportunity to work with Danger Mouse, who's worked with such noted individuals such as the lead singer from the Shins, and they together had a project and still have a project called Broken Bells, which is another great example of rock still being alive. That's the thing, Gene. That's the thing. You're looking at rock and roll as a very simple idea. You're looking at rock and roll as the way in which you remember it. Whenever rock and roll is a genre that's constantly morphing itself, changing itself, and making itself better, making itself something different, something wild, something off the wall, something just so balls out crazy that you don't even know if it's your granddaddy's rock and roll or not, mainly because it's not. It's an evolution of it, and it's one that really draws on a lot of the same concepts. It draws on some of the same angst or the same principles. It's just one that's reflected differently. If you had a band out there that really just was a direct, Kiss ripoff, would they really be all that popular? Would people really care all that much about them here in 2014? I really don't know. I really don't know if that would be something that would work. That said, we have bands such as, Wolf Mother or Airborne that are really able to incorporate a heavier edge. Well, we have bands that are kind of fringe bands. Some people would say that maybe Five Finger Death Punch are rock, but I disagree with that. They're more of a metal band, and they definitely have a huge, huge following, and they're more. We're going to just throw that more into the metal department, but at the same time, is that more what you're talking about? Something that has angsty edge and something that has a little bit more of that, lip curl and scream flavor to it? Because that really seems kind of silly if that's all that you're talking about, whenever there's so many other things out there. Like I said, there's no doubt a plethora of bands that I've missed based around this. In fact, I know that I have. I know that there are bands that are, right there on the tip of my tongue. Ones that just haven't come forward, that really haven't come to mind. And the reason isn't because of the fact that, they're not important. I could easily mention, bands of old that have really experienced revitalizations of their career, such as Not a Serve. Either that or I could talk about other really obscure bands that definitely seem to really purvey things a little bit, such as Destroyer. I could easily talk about Dawes, which has more of a folk rock approach, that, here's a band that opened for Bob Dylan whenever they came to town. But then we talk about the granddaddy of them all. We talk about your granddaddy's rock band, or at least it will be one day. We talk about a band such as the Beatles. We talk about bands such as Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd has a new album coming out, don't get me wrong, but what I'm actually talking about is a band that's only been out for a couple of years, has only 2 albums to their credit, but man oh man have they been wowing a lot of people with their blend of real psychedelic flavor, but also mixed with good old-fashioned rock and roll music with vocals that remind me a lot of the Beatles' White Album. Yeah, that band's Tame Impala. These guys are great. In fact, you guys recommended this outfit to me a number of years ago, and I kind of just brushed it off. And now I'm really disappointed that I did that, because now that I've discovered them as of a couple of months ago, I'm loving everything that they do. Picking up an album such as Lonerism and listening to it 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 times a day, good lord. If I'm a reviewer, I really need to be focusing on other things, but it's really hard to pull away from this material. And their second album is just as good. In fact, the second album has some even catchier stuff on it. And that's the thing. Whenever I say catchy, that almost sounds like a bad thing for a band that's so mind-expanding. One that really takes these ideas and just decides to throw them into a blender and try something brand new. But that's the thing. Catchy is still something they're able to do with these ideas and still reflect them and make them make sense. It's incredible what they're able to do. Now, some people are probably going to sit here and say, well, Mark, you didn't talk about pop punk or post-punk or anything like that, and that's because, well, think about the names. It is something that is a subsection of rock music, and yeah, maybe it does kind of prove that rock isn't dead, but in reality, that's its own movement. It's its own thing that's going on. It's something that's really very independent of this idea. But Gene, I will say this, rock certainly isn't dead. In fact, rock is just warming up. If there's one thing that I remember from the 1990s is that the fact that it was preceded by the 80s. The 80s was an era that was dominated by hair metal, by glam metal, a bunch of people dressing up like, practically like women, and new wave. The rock music that was happening in the 1980s were a lot of bands that were kind of still alive and around from the 1970s that were trying to continue their careers. Some had some great revitalizations, such as Aerosmith, but a lot of others were just kind of going through a lot of bad times. They decided to take off their makeup or something like that. Stupid shit like that. And New Wave really got the opportunity to shine. Meanwhile, this whole idea of alternative rock was really starting to take shape with bands such as REM, who are no longer with us. However, there's a great band to exhibit why rock should still be alive and well in the hearts and minds of everybody, considering that sort of attitude still pervades on. That's how U2 started. They just released a new album. You're going to say rock is dead whenever U2's still going strong? They're just as important culturally right now as, Pearl Jam in this department. Say what you will about Bono, but the man still can sing like, nobody's business. It's crazy. But what happened after the 80s? What happened after New Wave and glam metal and all this other stuff died? It became a revolution of rock once again. Right now, here in the 20-teens, we're looking at a revolution of pop music. Pop and rap, hip-hop, and we're looking at how this is all kind of expanding itself a little bit. We're taking a look at how some space pop is coming out. Miguel is deciding that he's going to do his best Prince impersonation and do better than Prince, considering Prince just released 2 albums that apparently sucked so much dick that, well, Liberace is jealous. But look at that. There's almost a fusion right there with somebody that's not even technically a rock musician. Rock is still here. Rock is still breathing. Rock is still alive and well. It's not even on life support. And if I ever said that it was, damn was I wrong. There's so much out there. There's such a wealth. You do have to do a little bit of digging. You do have to do a little bit of research. It's not as easy to find. But let me tell you something. Once you do get sucked in, it's almost impossible to leave. These same people that are listening to pop rock, these same people that are listening to hip hop, they're jamming to some rock as well. The only thing that we really need to have happen is a rock and roll sales revolution. And Gene, that's whenever you shut your mouth about how it's dead and actually promote it and help it come back to life. Name the other bands that you think really prove that rock is still alive in the comments below. Encourage other people to check them out. And of course, we can talk more about this if you like. Recommend that we do that. Subscribe. Like this. That way we'll be able to talk about this for years to come. And together as Cover Killer Nation, Cover Killer and Nation, so to speak, we can build this revolution. Just like we built the revolution for heavy metal. And we showcased and showed and flexed our muscles to see and prove just how important the heavy metal genre is. We can do the same damn thing for rock. So let's do it.